What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Mewzings Podcast Studio. Today, I am joined by Miss Clara Meath. How are you doing today, Clara?
Hi, James. It is I, Clara Meath. Good to see you.
It is you.
It is.
We are here. We got through our little technical
Of
difficulties,
course,
and
right?
we're ready to rock and roll. How's your day going?
Pretty good. Getting good work done. Working on my next big project. Waiting to hear back from an editor about my next cover gig. You know, they got to approve the thumbnail sketch.
Oh,
So
yeah.
waiting on that, getting my own stuff done in the interim.
Nice. Do you do a lot of commissions and things like that?
Commissions right now I have closed. Cover gigs are their own thing, you know, because those come from actual publishers.
Yeah,
Closed my commissions just so I could get, you know, some actual project work done. And I'll be reopening them back when I have time. But cover gigs come on their own, and I don't generally turn down cover gigs because they're really good visibility.
for sure.
They're depending on the company, decent pay. But either way, it's a really good thing to add to your, you know, sort of your collection.
Yeah.
And the originals often sell as well to, you know, to fans of whatever book you're doing a cover for. I do a lot of variant covers, so it's fairly easy often to sell those covers, and they're fun work. They're fun work.
People go crazy for the variant covers. The collector
Really
market.
do.
Yeah.
They really did. The collectorism of comics is not. I think collectorism is like one of those things you have to have the gene for it.
Yeah.
And I just don't. Like I'm not like I just don't have an instinct to, you know, collect and keep things. I'm just like, "Oh, that exists in the world. That's, you know, that's enough. That's as much ownership as I need personally.
In a
It belongs
way,
to the universe, you know."
yeah.
But
In a way, I would say
not
you're
to
you're fortunate because it becomes
well,
it becomes a problem, especially when you have multiple kinds of collections like me. Like those are all art books
yeah.
and artist
Hey, don't get
editions
me
and
wrong, I have way too many books, so
yeah,
I'm not saying that, but, I do appreciate I have taught myself to very much appreciate the collectorism in comics because that is where my money mostly comes from.
so there's not, 20 long boxes hiding in that room somewhere like my basement.
No, I only have 3 long boxes, and they're all of my own books.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword. I've always been a collector and it's when it gets to the point when you're considering building an addition onto the house to house everything, it becomes a problem. I have an appreciation for it though. I just think that the market right now, you see like all these crazy things. Like today, I saw. Did you see those whatnot variant packs that with the? So it's
No.
like reprints of past popular like Marvel key issues and things, and it's like
Okay.
it's like a blind pack, so like a grab bag type of thing, and they were
Ah,
sold through whatnot and so people are pulling like foil variants of reprints of old stuff, but like somebody just
mhm.
sold a couple of those for $1,600 each on eBay. So they paid $120 for the grab pack thing and then sold those. They made like 3,000
My
bucks on
gosh.
eBay, so it's kind of
Wow.
interesting, like just seeing the frenzy for some of this stuff.
I don't every now and then I'll get on eBay and just search myself to see what
Yeah.
my stuff is worth, and it's like, "Oh, that's about what I thought. Nothing special." Not at a point where I need to start putting stuff on there in order to pay my bills kinda thing, but maybe
There you
someday.
go.
A girl can dream.
One day.
Hopefully.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about your career and how you got started into, art and drawing comics. I always ask, did you have formal training? Was art something that you were always interested in, and then it just evolved to the point where you got into the comic industry?
I did it in a very roundabout way. I first went to college, you know, at the standard age to do so, and I tried 2 different colleges, and nothing was really working for me. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't finding my passion. I wasn't feeling like I was pursuing a path that would like that I wanted to stay on for the rest of my life kind of thing. And then for a while I was just sort of that listless, aimless 20 something who just kind of worked retail jobs trying to figure out what to do with their life.
Yeah.
And I remember I picked up and at this point in my life I had not been a comic book reader. I'm still only a comic book reader when I have remind myself I need to do that to remember how they work so I can make them. But it's not a habit like I neurologically ever formed,
Yeah.
it's just comic book reading. So I didn't grow up with that. But I had always been very creative. I'd always been, I'd always had that storytelling bug. I'd always done a lot of, now it's called maladaptive daydreaming, where you're a bored enough kid that you just make up epic fantasies all the time. Um,
Right.
so I'd always done that, and I'd always been very literary. I was very bookish. I liked to write. At the time, I wanted to be a novelist, or earlier in life, I wanted to be a novelist. But during those aimless 20-something years, I picked up Umbrella Academy,
Oh, that was a
and I
great one.
started reading that. And that was kind of the first time. If you're not raised on comics, you don't really realize this is an industry that still exists.
Yes.
You know, you kind of everyone knows about the golden age and the silver age, and the first Superman comic and all that stuff. Everyone can tell you about that, but if you're not into it, it's a niche enough entertainment industry that you can go through life not really knowing it exists. I really didn't realize that, and well, rather to rephrase that, uh, knowing that book and knowing that it was by Gerard Way, who I was a big fan of because I was an emo kid, if you couldn't
Mhm.
guess
Can't
by the
tell at
apparel
all.
here. Um, uh, I get and was is a very vague term there now, isn't it? Um, but that was kind of when it clicked for me that was like, oh, like people my age are like doing this. This is still a thing. And I remember deciding kind of right then and there, well, I've always written and I've always drawn. I was that kid in the class. It was like the art kid. It
Mhm.
was like, well, if you want something drawn, Clara will draw it for you kind of thing.
Right.
And uh uh and I kind of decided right then and there, I've always written and I've always drawn, so why don't I just combine those? And I googled right then and there, schools in the US that teach comics as a 4-year degree, because it's like there's got to be a way to actually learn that. Like I didn't want to go the slow route at that point because I was old, I was old to be starting. So
Right.
in my head, of course, like what does that even
Yeah.
mean? It doesn't
It's
matter.
all relative, right?
Right, yeah. It's not like I was trying to become an actress when you have to start at 8, you know? Um,
Yeah.
but but yeah, and there was a couple there's I wanna say 3 to 4 schools in the US that teach comics as a 4-year degree, and one of them was SCAD, which oh my gosh, I'm wearing the hoodie.
You're wearing it,
This is
yeah.
so old, dude. This is like it's probably rotting. I probably shouldn't be wearing this, but I'm wearing the hoodie. Um and yeah, I decided right then and there this was going to be my degree, and I was going to go to SCAD, and I was going to figure out how to make it work. And I'm still paying for it because of how I figured out how to make it work. But that's life. Aren't most of us?
Right.
But yeah, it went really well. It ended up being a really wonderful time in my life that I really, really enjoyed, and it was super validating from beginning to end. It was the first time in my life that was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm good at. This is what I need to do. I psychologically need to do this. This is not optional. And I've just been trying to stay on course ever since. It's really hard to make money in this business, as I'm sure you know, as I'm sure
Yes.
you've heard many people opining about.
It's a
But
grind,
I'm
yeah.
hanging in there, hanging in there.
Good, I'm glad to
So
hear
that was
that.
that kind of went off topic, but you got a whole bunch of story right there.
No, I love it. With SCAD, were they structured similarly to like the Kubert school in that you would have like a class on figure drawing, a class on sequential storytelling? Like, how did they structure things? And were the instructors there like professionals in the field or former professionals from the comic book field?
Um, I respect the format of how they laid out their art education, because almost everyone in any visual art department, game design, animation, literally fashion, whatever, would all have to go through the foundational courses, which involved things like, anatomy and the foundations of drawing and design and color
Right,
theory and stuff like that. So by the time we got into our majors in like the last 2 years, there really weren't that many years of like specific focused work, which at the time was like, well, I want to get into comics, but now I realize just how smart that was. So that was something I definitely respect about how they laid out their coursework. Everyone sort of had the same vocabulary by the time we started, our areas of focus.
right.
But yeah, we eventually towards the end, we got to actually focus on it was called sequential art, the major. And it was comics and storyboarding. And we had we had storytelling one, we had storytelling two, we had, the projects where we had to make mini comics and write scripts and, review each other's scripts. And it was all absolutely delightful there, especially
That's
towards the
awesome.
end when we were all, getting into what we really wanted to do. And the energy was great because we all knew, we're the weirdos. We're the ones in this tiny industry, and we have to be strong for each other, and we have to do the best we can. And we have so much to prove. When you're that age, you have so much to prove. So
Oh,
the energy
absolutely.
was great and really enthusiastic and fun. And yeah, it was a really good time in my life.
Did they, pile the work on you? Was the workload pretty heavy as far as homework and everything? I heard that other art schools, they, like, kinda try to prepare the people for being in the industry and
Right.
just, like, because comics is a lot of work. A lot of people don't realize, like, how much goes into it, especially someone like yourself who's working on your own creator-owned stuff and everything, where you're literally writing, lettering, drawing, like, penciling, inking, everything. Like, it's a huge workload. So did you get a little bit of a taste of that in art school with the assignments they were giving you?
At the time, of course, it felt like a lot. I had kind of the even today it feels like an unfair advantage because I was several years older than most of these people and you mature so much in that, window of life. At the time, I had a fairly good sense that this was actually a light workload. All the normal college age students were kind of feeling like it was way too much.
Right.
But that's how you feel at that time. It's whatever. No shade on them. But having now worked professionally for some time, I can say it was not very much work at all. It just
Y
introduced me to the
yeah.
concept of like, look, you hit deadlines or you don't have a job. That's how it goes.
You have a whole different frame of reference now being in the
Yeah.
industry, right?
Yeah.
Retrospectively, you're you're like, "Yeah,
And
guys,
I remember them
that wasn't
telling
a
us
whole
too,
lot."
it's like, "Oh, no," when I'm sorry, I spoke over
No,
you,
you're all
sorry.
good.
I remember them telling us at the time, like, "These are actually light workloads, and it actually is harder when you get into it," and that seemed impossible to comprehend at the time, but again, I figured you figure it out, you figure it out, and they were 100% right, it is harder when you're actually in it, but it's real, and that makes so much of a difference, like, you can
Yeah.
make it happen at that point because 'cause you're not just pleasing old Professor so and so who you're already tired of or whatever. Well, I don't know why I use that metaphor because I adored all my professors, they were all wonderful, but yeah, it is harder afterwards, it is harder in the real world, but I think they prepared us well, and you gotta create a gentle slope because if they start, like, up at the top, if
Yeah.
you immediately plateau to how hard it can be, nobody would get through that course, that's just reality.
Well, and I'm sure it's different, like you said, it's kinda like trial by fire. You get in there and now you're actually working for a client or you're working for a publisher,
Yeah.
which brings me to the next thing I wanted to ask you. I'm sure you remember your first professional assignment in the comic book industry. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
My first job was an unpaid gig that was never published, which I can't emphasize enough is very common for a first gig. It was an odd little sci-fi series by a micro mini indie publisher, which is literally like one of those like we're three guys and we make comics kind of thing that we
Yeah.
self-publish and whatever. But it was really valuable at the time because or rather very validating at the time because I actually got that gig in my junior year. So that was extremely exciting. It's like, "Oh, I'm already working. I'm the real
Yeah,
thing.
that's
This is gonna
really,
be great?" And of course that
really
that work
cool.
never saw the light of day, but again, that's
Yeah,
common. Life goes on. But from that gig, I met uh Richard Rivera, who is the writer of Shadow Play, which was my first actual gig. So it really does matter who you know. They would always tell
definitely.
us, at the end of the day, what matters most is who you know and what your connections are. And I know now that I balked at that because I felt threatened by it because I was so introverted at the time. I was like, I don't want to know people. Get out of here.
Yeah,
And I would always just tell myself, no, it's how good you are. Just be good. And it's like, no, it's 100% who you know. 100% is a stretch, but you know what I'm saying.
yeah.
Who you know matters so much. It makes such a huge difference, and that just keeps compiling year upon year. It's like the more people you know, the more connections you make, the more work you get. Like literally this cover gig I'm about to start on, I only have because of the previous one I did for Oni, the Autumn Kingdom issue 2 variant cover, which is out now, and I should be getting comps someday, but that's how life goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, connections are so much of it, is a huge percentage of it.
Yeah, you're not the first artist on here to talk about that in the importance of community and connection. And I had Koi Pham on here, and he's a phenomenal artist and done work for Marvel and DC and everybody. And he talks a lot about that, like developing that community and those connections, and just how
Right.
everything kind of comes full circle with that. So that's really cool to hear from you as well, that you've experienced the same thing in your work.
Yeah. Especially if you're gonna be doing creator owned, because then you don't have the automatic infrastructure of everyone in your publishing company now knows who you are kind of thing,
Yeah.
you're going solo, so you gotta pull people in as you go. It's sort of the rogue crew at that point. You gotta build your own D&D campaign of
Yeah.
people with different skill sets as you go.
Speaking of community, I recently watched your update for October of going, was it SuperCon?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. The
Yes.
you're talking about my monthly plan
Yeah, your
live
little
stream?
live update. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I do that just
you
to
got
stay
to go to
accountable.
SuperCon and catch up with a bunch of your friends and
Oh,
people that put on the event and
yeah,
everything. So I think that really speaks to this element of community that we were just talking about. So
yeah.
how was your experience at SuperCon and in getting to be there? And you said you sold lots of art, which is great.
I did. Yeah, SuperCon, I mean, if you're on my Instagram, dear listeners out there, you can watch that recorded live stream. That was the most effusive I think I've ever been on a live stream. I love SuperCon so much. So this is a con, an annual con in South Dakota that I've been going to for many years, and it's literally always just wonderful because you're just building the relationships there. The team that runs it is, ever shifting, but a lot of the core people are always there, and everyone's just so excited to have you there. And you get a lot of the same guests every year, so you get to catch up with them and you get to meet new people, and like it becomes a really strong community. It's like a family reunion every year, and I really
Yeah.
enjoy it. And we all hang out and we all catch up on, like, okay, what have you done since last year? Let me see. Let's all trade. Let me buy this. Let me buy this, and we're all just very supportive of each other, and it's I think it's really beautiful. I think it's cons as fraught as they can be, with a lot of difficulties and a lot of drama, because it is all just a group of really weird people getting together. In many ways, I've come to realize I think this is the way it's supposed to be. This is kind of the ideal model for humans to interact and sell things. It's kind of the market model. It's a medieval marketplace, really, and like they think that's the most natural state for humans to interact in those ways and to
That makes
shop and
sense.
relate. And
Yeah.
I'm really charmed by sort of the primal that this primal model has organically reemerged from nerddom, and that we did that with our weirdness, wanting things to be real, not just corporate and manufactured, that we wanted
Yeah.
organic like this. And I would love to do I'd love to have somebody do like a sociology study on like the entire dynamic of a Comic-Con. Like
For
I've
sure.
become so fascinated with it, in an anthropological sense as the years have
Yeah.
gone by.
My wife and I go to a lot of cons, and we always comment on like how much we love it because everybody there is so nice.
Yeah.
Like even the fellow, our fellow nerds that are going to the con, like you already have stuff in common. You can spark up a conversation with the person next to you in line and
Yeah.
get along great. And it's just such a great dynamic. It's always so much fun and kind of restores faith in humanity a little bit each time we go, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Yeah, no, honestly, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Always, I'm tired afterwards. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy
For
output, but
sure.
there's always like I feel positive about things, I feel positive about humans. Even if it wasn't a good selling con, you're like, yeah, but I still had good interactions. Nobody was like, your
Yeah.
work sucks, get out. That's literally never happened. So it's just, yeah, it's just a really, even the worst con is still like, well, that was pretty cool. you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of value in those positive human interactions.
Yeah.
Those are worth a lot.
So yeah, they'll keep you
Now,
going for a long time when it's a thankless job like this.
now, when you go to cons, do you do like head sketches and offer commission? Like, do you have a commission list where you're sitting there working throughout the con, or do you bring a lot of your prints and things like that to sell?
I bring it's mostly selling. Yeah, I bring books, I bring prints, I have stickers, I have shirts now. I'm just expanding out kind of my merchandising. I am starting to take table commissions now as well. For a long time, I didn't do them because I was just too anxious and too type A. And I
Yeah.
was like, "What if it's not good? I need to be alone in silence to do this kind of thing." And like I said before the show, I've been going through, enough of a healing process that I'm getting, my mental health and stuff under control that I've now started taking table commissions, and I did two at SuperCon. And it is once you accept, as the artist, that like, okay, a table commission, part of the point is that it's almost more performance art. This is
Right.
not going to be of the same caliber as, a cover you do for a big company. And that's okay. Like, it took me a long time to accept that, I assume out of ego. I can't think of why else I would have that problem. But yeah, once you accept that, it makes it a lot easier. They just want something from you. They just want something that you made specifically for them, and that's all it really is. It doesn't have to be mind blowing. And like both the table commissions I did, this past SuperCon were just like, oh, that works. Yeah, I'm happy with that. It's sketchy. I can tell I just did it here in an hour or so, but I like it. And then they come back and pick it up, and they're like, oh, it's so great. They love it so much. It's like, all
Exactly.
right, well, if that's the way you feel about it, then I'm not gonna take that from you, It's more power to you,
Yeah.
and I'm glad I can make you that happy with that small amount of work. Plus, it makes the your income from the show
Yeah.
go up very rapidly when you take table commissions.
Oh,
You can charge
definitely.
a fair amount for
Well, and
those.
like you said, it's special because it's coming from you,
Right,
and it's a unique
right.
thing, and they're wanting to own a piece of your original
Yeah,
work. So, and especially if it's something where they're asking you to draw a certain thing, like it's like I got my favorite artist to draw this
right.
thing that I came up with, which is really special for people as
Yeah.
well.
And I believe the two commissions that I did are on my Instagram now. If you scroll back a few posts, I did Beast from X-Men, and I did
Yep.
Red 7 from Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah, I saw both of those. I know you're hard on yourself because all artists are, but they were very good. They
Well,
turned
thank
out
you.
really well.
I'm glad, I'm glad.
Absolutely. Well, now I wanted to talk a little bit because how I discovered you was through your Instagram, obviously,
Always
and
is.
I loved your process stuff where you were showing your process and going over it and talking about certain aspects of creating your book and everything. For me, as somebody who draws, it's always inspiring to see that, and it's inspiring to see the creative process and try to learn from it. And you are, along with that, or as an evolution of that, you're working on a perspective course, I remember hearing.
I am, yes,
How is that coming along?
that's what I was working on, right before I got on here, actually, yes.
Awesome.
So, this has taken way too long, but sort of the, emergence of that was 2 years ago now. I made a panel to give at SuperCon. So I'm a special guest when I go to SuperCon, so one of the obligations there is they, if possible, give a panel, They're paying for you to be there, it's the least you can do, right?
Right.
So, I try to, and again, so type A, I go way overboard. A lot of times, we've all been to con panels. It's just like a couple people sitting there and they talk a little bit and then you take questions and then you have a conversation
Right.
with the audience and that's kind of it. I do a full, like, college lecture when I give a
I
panel.
was gonna say, is PowerPoint involved? Or
Yeah,
is there
oh,
a PowerPoint
100%,
slideshow?
100%, an
Awesome.
extensive PowerPoint. So I made a one on perspective drawing because I'm really passionate about that because it's such a magic bullet, and people are so afraid of it. If you can just stop talking yourself out of putting any effort into things and learn this, your work will be years better overnight. Like, I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. It's so
Yeah.
important. And, when there's something wrong with your work and you don't know what it is, it's almost always perspective. And if you learn perspective, You're good. You got this. So I'm really passionate about
Even
this. It's
even
great.
people don't realize, even when it comes to figure
Yes.
drawing, when you get better at perspective drawing, you develop a better understanding of placing the figure
Yes.
in three-dimensional space. So it actually makes your figure drawing better too.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people only think of perspective drawing when they think of that term, they automatically think of
Build
buildings and finding
spaceships
the
and
the
planes,
vanishing
factories.
point and perspective grids
Yeah,
and all of
yeah,
this.
and that's one of the points I try to hit really hard in that panel. It's like, a lot of people tell themselves, "You only need this for certain things." You absolutely need it for everything. If you draw one of the lines is, "If you draw a dot on a page, there is immediately perspective in that drawing. It's inherent,
Yeah,
it's all there, you just need to know how to use it." So, it's not something you can avoid. But yeah, well, I'm very glad you agree because
for
that's
sure.
important. But again, I'm direct to the listeners. Be aware. We agree on this.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, so I gave that panel and I like it so much. I was like, okay, what if I make this into a book? What if I make an instructional book that's not like super intimidating and show offy? Like I'm sure there's good perspective books out there. I just have never really found one,
They're,
you know?
like you that word intimidating is pretty spot on. Like
Right.
even the good ones, I have a whole perspective section up here on the bookshelf, and
Yeah.
I have the quote unquote best ones,
Right.
but they're so good that they're
Yeah.
like super, like even the basic stuff seems super advanced the way it's presented.
Right. And then well, and it's just that it's that academic problem, that's so common. Like once you know everything about something, it's really hard to backtrack your brain and regress and figure out like, okay, what are the very basics of this that I can tell, actually make it presentable
Yeah.
and learnable.
Remembering what it was like when it was new to you.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Go back to that fearful innocent that you were. That's like, "I don't understand anything." Yeah,
Yeah.
and make it as accessible as possible. So that was my goal with that, to make a very simple, understandable process book. Because in actuality, it's fairly simple. If you get taught it gently and step by step, it's like, "Okay, this is totally understandable." So, I called up my publisher, Andy Schmidt at Comics Experience Publishing. He's got both my creator-owned books there, as well. And I was like, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing this perspective book. Is that something you'd like to publish?" And he's like, "I'll do you one better. We have our video educational course on the
Oh,
side.
nice.
Why don't you take that presentation and expand it into, a series of, videos catering to today's attention spans
Right.
and, actually expand that whole presentation into an actual, educational course." And I was like, "Okay, if I can do that and the book and I kickstart them and we both promote that Kickstarter, there's the deal." So we arrived on there, which by the way is one of the ways you are totally allowed to negotiate with your publisher.
Right.
Always be trying to level it up. Um, so it took way too long because I'm doing way too much right now, but I'm finally getting to the good part of it. Right now, I'm in the process of preparing all the images that'll be layered in the videos, and I'm decent at video editing and stuff like that as well. So I'm going to be making those pretty soon. I'm going to be just recording myself reading that script. I'm going to be editing that all together. I'm going to be bouncing it off Andy at Comics Experience, and we'll just figure that out as we go. I got to lay out the book. Um, and I got to put together the Kickstarter. But I'm actually getting pretty close to being able to do, those things, get to the meat of it.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited. And I assume you know a bit about, recording technology because I need to decide what kind of backdrop and lights to get.
Yeah, I do everything myself, and I'm kind of
Okay.
a little bit of a control freak when it comes to
Same.
things, which it sounds like
Yeah.
we might share that
Yeah.
trait. So yeah, I always take on a lot, and yeah, I know quite a bit, probably quite a bit more than I should about that kind
Well,
of
I may bug
stuff.
you afterwards for some recommendations.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. But yeah, that's my next
Yeah,
big
not a
project, and
problem.
I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited too. I can't wait to see that. I'll definitely be backing that on Kickstarter when it goes
Thank
live.
you. Yeah,
So
I have no idea, what to expect in terms of earnings from that. Like, I
yeah.
really don't. I get a sense of like how much you can make for a comic book, but I have no idea what to expect with that. So we will see. We'll see.
Yeah, Kickstarters are kind of like my friend Will Robson does a lot of Kickstarters,
Hmm.
and he's like I know his current one had got to like 77% funded and there's a week left and he's feeling that pressure and
Right.
he thinks he's going to make it, but he's in that final stretch.
Right.
So it's just kind of like it can be unknown territory. You can have a project that gets backed super quick
Yeah.
and fully funded right away, and
Right.
then you can have one like this where he's experiencing, oh man, I hope we make it.
Yeah, yeah, it can be really hard. It can be really, and Kickstarters are a whole thing. There's a whole, like, that's its whole. You could get a 4-year degree into how to do a good Kickstarter. Like, it's so
Oh yeah.
complicated, and it's there's so many variables. I'm really glad it exists because it allows people like me to literally do the job I currently have. Is, you make something and then you ask the internet to pay for it and then you give it to them in
Yeah.
exchange. Yeah, that's, I mean, I wouldn't have a job if it weren't for that, but man, is it a lot of work. Man, is it a lot.
Now, your creator owned projects, how many of those have been published so far?
I have done 2 of those so far. I mean, that's not counting the annual sketchbook and the sketch card compilation book and stuff, like, things you could
Right.
just make yourself, make it to a PDF, send it to a printer, and you could
Yeah.
just, order them yourself and sell them. I guess that's technically self-publishing as well. But my self-published books, Edgar Allan Poe's The Conqueror Worm and Mother 47, I both self-published, and I was just selling them on my own for a while, and then when I met Andy at Comics Experience, he offered to publish them for me. So they are now available through the conventional means. And as things stand, I just have a standing agreement with him that whatever I make, he will then publish, within reason. So that's a
Awesome.
pretty sweet deal, right? That's a very sweet gig. So I'm very
Yeah,
grateful
that's
to
a
him at
great
all
deal.
times.
Now, were those kickstarted as well? Have you done previous Kickstarters? Yeah.
Yeah, I've
So you have
done.
some idea what, like you said, what comics do in that
Right.
regard, but as far as this instructional videos and book and all of that,
Yeah.
kind of unknown territory for you.
We'll find out, I guess. We'll find out. I don't know if it's one of those things that's intimidating enough that people are still avoiding it in that way, or if I can really sell the promise that I'll make this understandable enough to
I
make them
think
pay
that's
I don't know.
your
We'll find out. It'll be cool either
I
way.
think that's your hook right there.
Right. Yes.
The selling it on the fact that this is going to be
Right.
a somewhat easily understandable
Yeah.
course on perspective compared to, in
Right.
relative comparison to what else is out there, right?
Yeah. I gotta lean into that.
You got to lean into that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So with your creator owned stuff, is it still readily available?
Yeah.
Are there online versions as well, or is it only print books that you can order?
Believe you can get digital versions. I know you can at least get the Kindle version of Mother 47 on Amazon, but otherwise you can get them from Comics Experience Publishing. That's the main place you can get them.
Okay.
Or you can go on my Instagram and go to one of my online shops and get them directly from me and they will be signed. That's the thing. When you buy them directly from me, they come signed.
Yes.
Obviously, they don't come signed from the publisher, but depending on what your priorities are, you got those two options.
Now I wanted to ask you because like I discovered you via Instagram and I seems like I'm discovering a new amazing artist like every day. Like I'm like
Mhm.
how one, how am I not following this person, and two, how are they not like the hottest artist in, for Marvel or DC or something? Like
Sure.
there's no shortage of talent out there. I was going to ask you what artists have inspired you over your career when you were getting into comics, and like who do you look to for um I guess inspiration, and just artists that you really like and whose work you deeply appreciate.
I would say the artist that gave me the bug for comics to begin with, and this is I feel like most people in North America who read comics, was Mike Mignola with Hellboy. I think he's
Oh yeah.
so often the gateway books, right? Is Hellboy. Still so good. Still some of the most beautiful stuff. And his
Especially if you're emo, right?
what was that?
Especially if you're emo.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, but yeah, and Mignola is so good at composition. So in terms of just like getting the bug for comics in general and really getting my head around like this is you got to really think about how you compose a scene and what you're trying to say with it and how you want the reader to feel and what you're trying to communicate and all these things. He was my strongest influence in that department. Stylistically, I do tell people though my strongest influences were Gabriel Rodriguez when I first read Lock and Key, and
Oh yeah, amazing stuff on there.
yeah, really good stuff. And and these days, Zach Howard, who is also my business partner,
Nice.
but he does amazing stuff. His recent Hellboy, so good. They're working on Moonshine Bigfoot right now, and I manage the Kickstarter for that. So that's going to be an amazing book. And I don't lightly say, I think it might be the most beautiful comic I've ever seen so far. They're about halfway
Oh
through
wow, I'm gonna
issue
have to
three
check
or
that one
four.
out.
So that's exciting.
That's very exciting. I'm assuming you watched the Mike Mignola documentary.
The newer one, I haven't seen it yet. No.
Oh my goodness, that it's really good.
I
You
have
got
a
to check that
little
out.
working closely with somebody who has worked with Mignola. I'm not as ravenous for Mignola content at the moment. Once you know more about someone in person, he's not a
I
bad
I
guy.
have heard
He's
I
just
have
rough.
heard stories. I will say that even knowing those stories and having a little insider info as well in regard to him, I still enjoyed the documentary quite a bit.
Good. I will get to it for sure. For sure. It's just not
Yeah.
top of mind right now.
I think another thing about his work is the minimalistic approach.
Hmm.
Like if you look at his old work, excuse me, if you look at his old work, he was inspired a lot by Jack Kirby
Oh yeah.
and did a lot of stuff drawing inspiration from that, but then he like pulled back to this minimalistic approach with the lighting and
Yeah.
everything and taking outlines, which is to me is a very unique thing because with a lot of us artists, we like to render,
Yeah.
we like to throw a lot of lines. So the idea of taking lines out can be
Yeah.
kind of a weird concept to a lot of us.
That just goes to show, to reinforce the concept that what comics is very good specific choices. There's only so many panels. You can't show every single frame like it's a film. Comics is picking the right moments and you can show very little if you pick the rightest thing. And
Right.
he's a real example of that. He's really good at that.
Do you draw inspiration from cinematography? Do you ever look at camera shots in movies and things and think, "Oh, that's something I can use in my comic for this camera angle or this scene
Yeah.
setup?"
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, and movies are very valuable for that. I was telling someone the other day, I can't remember who now. An exercise they recommended in school was watch movies with the sound off. And
Yeah,
that just really teaches you about the importance of composition and how much you can communicate with just silence, which is
right.
what comics are. But yeah, I love to watch. I don't often make the time, A, because I'm busy, and B, because I can't just watch a movie for entertainment. It's always just I'm just randomly shouting like, "Look at this shot! Look at that shot!" It's like I'm the worst person to watch movies with, and people in my life will tell you that. But yeah, it's not a way to relax, shall we say.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. The way your brain works, you're pulling bits and pieces from it at all times.
Yeah.
So, aside from the perspective instructional project that you have going, and you said you have some covers going, do you have another creator owned book that's in the works? I mean, I see you working on stuff all the time, so I'm
Yeah.
assuming the answer is yes. Is there anything you can tell us about that project?
Yeah. Well, a couple things to that. I want to make it very clear in terms of the Instagram, a lot of that stuff is reused. So
I
I'm not
remember you
constantly
mentioning
slaving
that on
away.
there.
But a lot
Yeah,
of that stuff is reused. Just don't, just so people don't feel bad. I'm not trying to imply that I'm constantly working. That platform is for education and for art appreciation. So,
right.
just want to throw that out there. I try
Well,
to
I
throw
thought
that
it
out
was
there every now
brilliant.
and then.
Like you had a good tip on there. You were basically saying like how you note like when you used a
Hmm.
certain clip, and then so when you go back to it, you have like a little back catalog of content that
Right.
you can then reuse. I thought that was really smart. I do that with my jujitsu instructional stuff that I
Ah,
post on my Instagram. So
okay.
every so many months I can put something back up, and like you said, your new followers haven't seen it. It's like brand new to them,
Right,
right? Or
exactly.
people forget sometimes too, right? Or they were thinking like, I remember she showed that one
Yeah,
thing and I really want to watch again, but
right.
I forgot to save it and I'm
Right,
not going to
and
scroll
it's
back
a
2
year
years
back,
in the
who's gonna
feed.
do that? Yeah,
Yeah.
I used to have a lot of embarrassment about doing that. It's like, "Oh, I'm failing because I don't have new content every day." That's nonsense. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If it was good enough the first time, if it affected someone the first time, it'll affect someone this time, and as long as you're, better to keep it in front of their eyes than to, kill yourself for something it's just social media, guys. Just calm down, you know? Um,
Yeah.
but to your actual question before I sidelined it. Um, yes. So my next creator-owned comic project is going to be a collection of 3 short comics. I absolutely love little short stories. I've always loved short stories. I always loved, when I was younger, I read so much like O. Henry and Chekhov and people who do these really, really good, meaty short stories. Um, just a wonderful medium. So, I'm doing 3 short comics, that I'll just collect as, I'll have the option to have the collection of them, or you can buy them separately, which is all kinds of Kickstarter incentives. So
Nice.
I've started drawing the first one, the second one is mostly written, the third one is still just a concept, but I'll just work through them one at a time, and then that will be the Kickstarter after the perspective course. Probably.
Very cool. Now you mentioned Chekhov, but a different Chekhov, because in your other video, you had a Star Trek shirt on,
I
and you
did.
mentioned that you got to meet the actor that portrayed the original
I did.
Chekhov in the Star Trek
Yeah.
series and the movies and everything. That's so cool.
It was cool. It was right before the first day of SuperCon started, and actually, it wasn't even like I didn't go through the line or anything to meet him. He was just wandering around with his handler, looking at tables before it started.
Nice.
My gosh, he is a tiny man. Like he is smaller than me. He is so small, and being 88, I'm sure didn't doesn't help. He's
Yeah, exactly. The gravity,
right.
compression of
The
gravity
gravity
just
has
kicked
taken
in.
its toll on him as he did not, spoiler alert, spend all that time in space. He's been here on Earth with
Yes.
gravity wreaking havoc on his human form, just like the rest of us. But yeah, I almost want to say he was shy. It was very cute. He was just this pleasant old man who was like a little like, oh, look at all the stuff kind of thing, you know? It was
Yeah.
really sweet.
So, a rare fact about me is that I was partially named after James T. Kirk
Oh,
by my parents in Star Trek. Yeah. So, Star
wait,
Trek was a big part of our household growing up.
yeah.
And I actually, as well as Star Wars, but I got to meet the original Scotty
Wow.
when I was a kid. He was at a local, back when we had video stores where you could rent VHS tapes and all of that. He was doing a signing at one of those by our house
Uh-huh.
randomly enough, and got to meet him and get a picture with him. He was super nice. The picture didn't turn out though. It was back in the day where you couldn't see till it got developed.
Right, right.
So it's all blurry.
Yeah.
Like, oh
Kids will
man.
never
But yeah,
understand, man.
yeah. Were you always a Star Trek fan?
Oh yeah, we grew up with Star Trek. That was our nerddom
Okay.
in the family growing up. I have 4 little sisters, so it was a large squawking group of children that, grew up watching Star Trek and making Picard jokes and just like it was good. It was good.
Oh yeah. Next
Yeah.
Generation was great. Yeah, I remember watching
Yeah.
all of those. And then going back and watching some of the older stuff, later on
So great.
reruns or whatever.
So great.
Yeah. Yeah. Now is it Trekkie or Trekker? I know there's some controversy about
Oh.
what the Star Trek fans
I
want to
have
be
only ever
called.
heard Trekkie, but
Yeah.
that makes me think that was a name that was given to them, and they're trying to claim Trekker as their chosen name, which is just my guess right now,
That's what I think. Yeah.
but,
Yeah, I think you're
it's
probably
whatever.
right.
It's not like I'm gonna start saying Trekker. I'm gonna keep saying Trekkie probably until I know otherwise.
We got to go
Right,
with it,
yeah.
right?
Sometimes society chooses for you, and you can't always push back. What you do then is you embrace it, and you make it yours, and you own it so that they can't use it against you anymore.
This is true.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Clara, it's been so great having you on today. I wanted to give you an opportunity to plug your social media, let everybody know where they can find you and what they should be on the lookout for, even though we've pretty much, I think, thoroughly covered that.
Yeah.
So, where's the best place for people to follow you online?
Easily the best place to follow me online would be Instagram. You can find me at Clara_Meath, which is Clara_MEATH. I update there regularly, both with reuse stuff and new stuff. Plenty of stuff, if you're looking just to be inspired or art education. People say they really enjoy my inking videos and stuff like that. If you want to help support me and help fund my upcoming projects, please consider subscribing to me on Instagram or becoming a patron on Patreon. They are, as of now at least, the same cost and have the same content. So, whichever works better for you there. And I would very much appreciate your support as I move forward into a new season of needing money for new different things.
Absolutely. And I'm going to make sure I put all that information in the description for this episode. And
Thank
I want
you.
to encourage everybody to go over and check out the podcast on YouTube/ at Nerdy Mewzings. Mewzings is Mewzings. Make sure you check us out there. Clara, thank you so much for being on here today. I really
Thank you for
appreciate it. I
having
know
me.
we've been trying to coordinate for a while, and I'm glad we
Right.
finally synced our schedules up and the chaotic lifestyles we live. Right.
Yeah, hey, us chronically overscheduled people got to be supportive of each other.
Well, I would love to have you back on when that Kickstarter launches for the perspective course.
That would be great. That would be great. Let's do that.
Awesome. Well, listen, hang out with me for a moment while I hit my outro. Everybody
Oh,
out there, make sure keep it nerdy, guys.